There's this moment that happens twice a year in most American households. April, when you file your taxes and see your actual gross income printed on that 1040 form. And December, when HR sends that year-end compensation statement. And both times, you stare at that number thinking the exact same thing. Wait, I make how much now? Because here's the weird part. That number keeps going up. 3 years ago, maybe you were making $55,000. Last year, $72,000. This year, you're at $83,000, almost 50% more than you made just a few years ago. And yet, when you look at your checking account balance, when you think about buying groceries, when you consider whether you can afford that weekend trip, you don't feel 50% better off. You actually feel worse. Your rent or mortgage payment went up, your car payment went up, your insurance went up, your grocery bill went up. And somehow, even though you're making almost $30,000 more than you were 3 years ago, you have less discretionary money at the end of the month than you did back then. You're living the same lifestyle, maybe even a slightly worse one, on significantly more income. And here's the disturbing part. It's not just you. It's not even close to just you. This pattern doesn't stop when you hit six figures. It doesn't stop at $150,000. There are people making $300,000 a year who feel exactly the way you do right now. And if you don't understand why this keeps happening, you're going to spend your entire career chasing a feeling of financial comfort that will always stay exactly one raise away. Here's the thing most people don't understand about making more money. They think the problem is that they're not making enough money yet. That if they could just get to the next milestone, 100,000, 150,000, whatever their magic number is, then they'd finally feel comfortable. Then they'd finally have breathing room. Then they'd finally feel like they're winning financially. But here's what actually happens, and this is backed by some genuinely disturbing data. According to Bank of America's 2024 analysis of millions of customer accounts, approximately 26% of American households are living paycheck to paycheck. Now, you might be thinking, okay, that makes sense. Lower income households are struggling. But here's where it gets really interesting. When they broke down the data by income level, they found that around 35% of households making under $50,000 are living paycheck to paycheck. That tracks with what most people would expect. But then you get to households making over $150,000 per year, and guess what percentage is living paycheck to paycheck? 20%. 1 in 5 households making over $150,000 are spending 95% or more of their income on necessities. And it gets worse. PYMTS Intelligence surveyed over 4,000 consumers and found that 48% of people earning more than $100,000 annually report living paycheck to paycheck. 48%. And when you get to people making over $200,000 per year, 36% of them, more than 1 in 3, say they're living paycheck to paycheck. Now, a lot of financial content will tell you that these people are just bad with money, that they're living beyond their means, that they need to budget better, track their expenses, cut back on lattes. But that explanation is intellectually lazy, and it's also mostly wrong. Because here's the truth that nobody talks about. The problem isn't that people are bad with money. The problem is that human psychology has a feature, not a bug, that makes it almost impossible to feel satisfied with whatever income level you're currently at. It's called lifestyle inflation, and it's the physical manifestation of a psychological phenomenon that's been studied since the 1970s. Your brain has a baseline level of happiness and comfort, and it will automatically recalibrate your expectations and spending to return you to that baseline, no matter how much more money you make. Most people think of lifestyle inflation as this conscious choice, like, oh, I got a raise, so now I'll upgrade my apartment and get a nicer car. But that's not really how it works. Lifestyle inflation happens automatically, unconsciously, through 1,000 tiny decisions that you don't even notice you're making. And by the time you realize it's happened, you're making $30,000 more per year and somehow have less money left over at the end of the month. You're living the same lifestyle, maybe even a slightly worse one, on significantly more income. Let me show you exactly how this plays out in real numbers. Because once you see the math, you can't unsee it. Let's say you're 28 years old, making $58,000 a year. After federal and state taxes, you're taking home roughly $45,000 annually, which is about $3,750 per month. Your rent for a one-bedroom apartment in a decent area runs $1,200. Add in utilities, internet, phone, you're at $1,400. Basic groceries, maybe $400. Car payment on your reliable but unexciting sedan, $280. Insurance, gas, maintenance, another $250. Health insurance premium, $150. Student loan payment, $200. That puts your essential monthly expenses at $2,680, which means you have about $1,070 left for everything else: eating out, entertainment, clothes, emergency savings, retirement contributions, literally everything else in your life. Now, 3 years pass. You work hard, you get promoted, you switch jobs for better pay. You're now making $82,000. Congratulations, right? After taxes, you're taking home about $62,000 annually, roughly $5,150 per month. That's $1,400 more per month than you were making before. Surely you're feeling way better off now. But here's what happened in those 3 years. You moved to a nicer apartment. Not a mansion, just something a bit bigger in a slightly better neighborhood. Your rent is now $1,750. Utilities didn't change much, but you added a few more subscription services, so you're at $1,600 for rent and bills. You upgraded your car because the old one was having problems, and honestly, you deserved something nicer after that promotion. Your car payment is now $550. Insurance on the nicer car, plus the fact that rates have gone up generally, puts you at $180 for car insurance. Gas costs more because you're commuting from that better neighborhood. Maintenance costs more because the car is newer but also more expensive to fix. Transportation is now $850 per month total. Your grocery bill has crept up, not because you're buying caviar, but because you're eating healthier, buying organic when it makes sense, not stressing about whether the $6 almond butter is too expensive versus the $4 one. You're at $550 for groceries now. You go out to dinner more because you're working harder and you're tired and cooking feels like a chore. Maybe twice a week instead of once a month. Add another $300 for dining out. You joined a gym because you're trying to take care of yourself. That's $80. Your student loans didn't change, still $200. Health insurance through your employer is better but not free, so you're still paying $150. Add it all up. Your essential and quasi-essential expenses are now $3,730 per month, which leaves you with $1,420 per month for savings, emergency fund, retirement, and everything else. Wait a second. You're making $1,400 more per month than you were 3 years ago. Your discretionary income went up by $350. You increased your income by 41% and your discretionary income went up by 33%. That's not terrible, right? But here's the part nobody tells you. 3 years ago, when you had $1,070 left over, you felt broke but hopeful. You were building towards something. You were on your way up. Today, with $1,420 left over, you feel just as broke, maybe more so, because you're not building toward anything anymore. You're just maintaining, and every month feels like you're one unexpected expense away from going backward. But here's where it gets really interesting, and also kind of disturbing. This pattern doesn't stop. I cannot emphasize this enough. It does not stop. Let's say another 5 years pass. You're doing well. You're making $135,000 now. After taxes, you're taking home about $95,000 or $7,900 per month. By conventional wisdom, by every financial article you've ever read, you should feel rich now. You're in the top 15% of individual earners in America. You've made it. Your rent, or maybe mortgage now, is $2,800 because you bought a small condo or you're renting in a really good area for the schools you're thinking about for the kids you might have. Bills and utilities, $250. You upgraded to 2 cars because you and your partner both need to commute. Car payments total $900. Insurance, gas, maintenance for 2 vehicles, $650. Groceries for 2 people, trying to eat healthy, not going crazy, but not penny pinching either, $900. Dining out and entertainment because you barely have time to cook and you need to actually enjoy your life, $600. Gym memberships for 2, $160. Health insurance premiums, $400. Student loans, hopefully paid off by now, but let's say you have a small remaining balance, $100. Maybe you're contributing to a 401k, let's say 10%, which is $1,125 coming out before you even see it. Your essential monthly expenses are now $6,730. Your discretionary income, $1,140. you are making $135,000 a year. You have less discretionary income than you did when you were making $58,000. This is not a hypothetical. This is the actual mathematical reality for millions of Americans. A Goldman Sachs report from 2024 found that 40% of people making over $300,000 per year describe themselves as living paycheck to paycheck. At some point, you have to stop blaming individual irresponsibility and start looking at the system. Now, here's what changes everything about how we think about this problem. The reason lifestyle inflation feels so inevitable, so automatic, is because it's not really about money at all. It's about how your brain processes changes in your circumstances. There's this concept in psychology called hedonic adaptation. Sometimes it's called the hedonic treadmill. The basic idea, and this has been studied extensively since the 1970s, is that humans have a remarkable and kind of terrible ability to adapt to both positive and negative changes in their lives. You win the lottery, you'll be thrilled for maybe 6 months to a year. Then you'll return to roughly the same baseline level of happiness you had before. You become paralyzed in an accident. You'll be devastated for maybe 6 months to a year. Then you'll adapt and return to something surprisingly close to your previous baseline level of happiness. This isn't speculation. This is one of the most well-documented phenomena in psychology. The famous 1978 Brickman study on lottery winners found that 1 year after winning, lottery winners were not significantly happier than people who didn't win, and in some measures, they derived less pleasure from everyday activities than they did before winning. And here's the critical part. Your brain runs this exact same program on every raise, every promotion, and every financial upgrade you've ever achieved. That $82,000 salary that felt incredible when you first saw the offer letter? Give it 3 to 6 months, and it's just your salary. It's not exciting anymore. It's normal. It's baseline. And now you're thinking about what it would be like to make $100,000. Research from Princeton University in 2010 by Daniel Kahneman and Angus Deaton found that emotional well-being rises with income, but only up to about $75,000 per year. After that threshold, making more money had no measurable impact on day-to-day happiness. Now, adjusted for inflation, that number today is somewhere around $95,000 to $100,000. But then a 2021 study by Matthew Killingsworth at Wharton found that happiness does continue to rise with income past that threshold, but at a dramatically diminished rate. What does that mean in practical terms? If moving from $50,000 to $100,000 brings you 20 units of increased happiness, moving from $100,000 to $200,000 might only bring you 5 or 6 additional units. You doubled your income, you more than doubled your stress and working hours, and you got a quarter of the emotional return. This is diminishing marginal utility applied to your entire life. And yet, every piece of financial advice, every productivity guru, every career coach is telling you to hustle harder and make more money, as if that's the solution. Now, here's the part that nobody talks about, and this is where you start to see why this is actually a solvable problem. The reason high-income earners are living paycheck to paycheck isn't because they don't make enough money. It's because their expenses rose to match their income automatically, without conscious decision-making. When Bank of America analyzed their data, they found that households living paycheck to paycheck spend on average about 90% more on necessities than households living comfortably, but their incomes are only 20% lower. The problem isn't the income. The problem is that what counts as a necessity in your mind expands automatically to consume whatever income is available. That nicer apartment isn't a necessity, but it feels like one because your peers at your new salary level live in nicer apartments. That nicer car isn't a necessity, but it feels like one because you're commuting to a job that pays well, and showing up in a 2012 Honda Civic with a dent in the door makes you feel like you haven't made it yet. Eating organic groceries isn't a necessity, but it feels like one because you're making good money and you shouldn't have to worry about whether you're buying the $4 strawberries or the $6 ones. Most people think they're upgrading their lifestyle because they can afford it, but what's really happening is they're upgrading their lifestyle because their brain is trying to return them to their baseline level of struggle and motivation. Your brain doesn't want you to feel comfortable. Comfortable means complacent. Comfortable means you stop trying. From an evolutionary perspective, that's dangerous. So your brain recalibrates what feels necessary to keep you in a state of productive anxiety. So let me paint you a picture of what this looks like 10 years from now. Because this is where the consequences of understanding or not understanding this phenomenon become permanent. Person A, let's call her Sarah, is 30 years old making $70,000. She reads this and thinks, okay, I get it. Every time I get a raise, I'm going to commit to keeping my lifestyle exactly where it is and investing the difference. Over the next 10 years, Sarah gets several raises and a promotion. By 40, she's making $130,000, but her expenses stayed at roughly $55,000 per year. She's been investing $30,000 to $40,000 per year for a decade. With compound returns, she has about $450,000 invested. At a 4% safe withdrawal rate, that's $18,000 per year in passive income. She's bought herself 3 days a week of not having to work. She has options now. She can take a lower paying job she enjoys more. She can start a business. She can work part-time. She has freedom. Person B, let's call him Mike, is also 30, making $70,000. He thinks, yeah, but I've worked hard for these raises. I deserve to enjoy them. Every time he gets a raise, his lifestyle expands to match. He moves to a nicer place, he upgrades his car, he eats out more. By 40, Mike is also making $130,000, but his expenses are now $115,000 per year. He's saving maybe $15,000 per year. With compound returns, he has about $180,000 invested. He's better off than he was, but he's trapped. He can't take a pay cut, he can't change careers, he can't work less. His lifestyle requires $130,000 to maintain. He has no options. Same starting point, same income trajectory, completely different outcomes. The difference is one person understood that the real purpose of making more money isn't to spend more money, it's to buy freedom, and the other person didn't. And here's the thing that most people miss. Sarah doesn't feel deprived. She's not living in poverty while Mike is living in luxury. They're probably living remarkably similar lifestyles. The apartment Mike moved to is maybe 200 square feet bigger. His car is a bit newer. He eats out twice a week instead of once a week. The actual tangible quality of life difference is minimal, but the difference in freedom is infinite. People who understand this, people who actively resist lifestyle inflation, they're not sacrificing happiness for some theoretical future. They're redirecting resources from things that provide temporary satisfaction to things that provide permanent freedom. And freedom, it turns out, is the only thing that actually makes you feel rich. Not the size of your paycheck, not the zip code you live in, not the car you drive. Freedom from being forced to work. Freedom to choose. That's what wealthy actually feels like. And most people never get there because they keep running faster on the treadmill, convinced that the next raise will be the one that finally lets them relax. Look, I want to be really clear about something. This isn't about never upgrading your life. This isn't about living like a monk while your income grows. This isn't about denying yourself nice things. That's miserable and unsustainable. This is about understanding that your brain is running a program that will automatically expand your definition of necessary to consume whatever income you have. And if you don't consciously choose where that income goes, it will disappear into a lifestyle that feels exactly as stressful as the lifestyle you had before, just with bigger numbers. You get to decide whether that $10,000 raise becomes a nicer apartment that you stop noticing after 3 months, or whether it becomes $10,000 per year moving you toward freedom. You get to decide whether that promotion is an opportunity to feel rich temporarily or to become rich permanently. You get to decide whether you're running on the treadmill or building a system that eventually lets you step off. The question isn't whether you deserve to make more money. You probably do. The question is whether making more money is actually going to solve the problem you think it's going to solve. Because for most people, it doesn't. It just recalibrates the treadmill to a higher speed. But for people who understand how this actually works, making more money becomes something different entirely. It becomes the raw material for building freedom. And that's when you finally, actually, genuinely feel rich. Not when you're making more, when you're free. If this changed how you think about income and lifestyle, hit that like button and subscribe for more content that challenges conventional financial wisdom. I'll see you in the next one.